In July of 1928, Joe Del Grande, my dad, was born in the small village of Massanaya, just outside of Lucca, Italy, near the western shores in the northern third of the country. On the 4th of April, 1939, still just 10 years of age, he, with his mother Libra and older sister Maria, left his 19-year-old sister Mafalda, who was just then engaged to be married, traveled a little over 300 miles to the south, boarded a ship leaving Naples, and headed to America, where his father, Vittorio, or Victor, had been working for nearly a decade to create a life for his family among the redwoods in Humboldt County. He left the beautiful rolling hills of northern Italy, the grapevines and gardens. He also left the rise of fascism and a growing police state run by Benito Mussolini. Less than 5 months after his family left their home, Hitler invaded Poland, marking the beginning of World War II. Less than a year later, Italy joined Germany in the war. By that time, the Del Grande family called 2004 F Street, Eureka, California, home. For his remaining 83 years, Dad would never really leave Humboldt County. He graduated from Eureka High School in 1948. There he was a football player, a member of Key Club, an international organization with the goal of leadership through serving others, whose notable members include President Bill Clinton and, perhaps more importantly, Steve Young, former quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers. He was a member of the Boys' Glee Club, which is likely where he got his chops to sing. It was also at Eureka High where he began many lifelong friendships, to include his enduring friendship with John McNaughton, my godfather. I should note, John was not in Glee Club, and if you ever had the joy of hearing the two of them sing together, you'd understand that right away. I did some poking around the internet for Joe Del Grande. The Humboldt historian had some great articles that date back to Dad's old high school days. One of the histories of Eureka High football had a note about Dad. Quote, Joe Del Grande was one of 3 brothers, Dave and Carl, who started for Coach Jay Willard. End quote. Interestingly untrue, the brothers part. But he did form lasting bonds of brotherhood with many of those graduates you can see in the video at Kathy's if you swing by the house later today. You see that brotherhood in the other parts of the internet where Dad's name appears, the obituaries of his friends. He would often bemoan the fact that his friends had gone before him, and I thought, since their families were kind enough to mention him, I'd take advantage of this last time to return the favor, at least for some. Of course, John McNaughton, who passed in 2018. Class of 48, John, while not singing operettas, went on to become a dentist. Bob Kelly passed in 2005. A high school classmate, they hunted together and made wine together. Bob was a founder of Winsler and Kelly Engineering and gave me one of my first summer jobs performing an energy audit for the Eureka Public Schools. John Pasquini passed in 2004. He established Sir John's, where Dad started bartending in earnest. His mother, Isabella Pasquini, was my caregiver as a young child, and his daughter Angela, who I had a crush on when I was 10, may be the reason Angela and I are married. Dale Poovey, who passed in 2012, was also a classmate and lifetime hunting and golfing friend, who struggled all his life from a rare vascular disease that ultimately took his life. And Harold Neville, who passed in 2016, was a judge of the Eureka Municipal Court, appointed in 1972 by then Governor Ronald Reagan. Sadly, the list goes on, but stands as a testament to the kind of man, the kind of friend Joe Del Grande was. While their passing brought him sadness, it was supplanted by the joy he took in watching the seedlings growing up around him, his children and grandchildren. Sporting events, performances, graduations, and marriages, a continued cycle of growth and renewal. As you know, Dad was an avid sportsman and gardener. I'd like to say one with nature. He followed in the footsteps of his mother and father at their home on F Street. I remember as a small child stomping grapes for wine, and the fermenting barrels in the garage surrounded by drying onions and garlic, the smell of wet fiberglass from a custom scull boat he made by hand with John Pasquini, while in the shed behind the fig tree, a buck hung, curing before being butchered. He loved working in his garden, growing vegetables and herbs. He loved hunting in the mountains and lakes, and fishing in the ocean and along the rivers, diving for abalone in the sea. But he was never happier than when he was sharing those adventures with others, sharing that bounty, that harvest with friends and family, and always best when surrounded at the dinner table with family and a glass of red wine. His sister Mary passed far too early, leaving 3 children, Linda, Vicky, and Victor. Victor is no longer with us. Linda is here, and Vicky asked I send her love and well wishes. He had a son, Greg, from his first marriage, but somewhere along the line they had a falling out and lost contact. When he married my mom, Cleta, she had a daughter of her own, Pat. He took her in and converted her to the gospel according to Sportsman magazine. Many pictures you'll see this afternoon include fishing trips with Pat along the coast, up the rivers, and in the wilds of Canada. She too sends her love today. My mom and dad divorced when I was about 6, and I would get 30 days in the summer and either Christmas or Easter to visit him. Needless to say, those visits often centered around hunting or fishing. It was during these visits I came to know his vast network of friends, always bartering their spoils of war, a couple abalone for a venison shank or a Dungeness crab. When I was older, we would often hunt elk from my uncle's cabin in Colorado, Lloyd, and one of my mom's other brothers, Gail, would often join Dad and say Bob Kelly or John McNaughton, doing what they could to not get arrested by Colorado Fish and Game. I will say he was a gentle spirit and an exceedingly kind man. Even when I was showing off to Angela Pasquini the finer features of gun safety and shot a rifle into the couch and out through the front wall of our house on F Street while he was in the shower, or the time I discharged a jammed shotgun into the back of Judge Neville's pickup truck when I was duck hunting with his sons. Perhaps it was these kinder, gentler features that caught the eyes of Ruth Reynolds. In 1985, the two were married here in Arcata, and while I was regularly changing my address serving the Air Force, 919 14th Street became home. There, the two of them forged a marriage of sharing, of trust, and of love, watching their family grow around them. For Dad, Ruth was his foundation, his grounding of family, in a life where previously the definition of family had grown more complicated by the decade. Ruth brought 2 beautiful daughters to the Del Grande family, Kathy and Diane. For me, it made coming home to see family that much more special, that much more grand. It was Christmas 1988 when I asked the love of my life, Angela Moraga, to marry me on Samoa Beach. We announced the engagement to the family while Christmas dinner was being prepared at Kathy and Larry's home. One summer, during a large birthday reunion dinner of sorts, the live lobster Pat had specially ordered to arrive fresh on the day never showed up, when in the 11th hour, Diane stepped in to help save the day, cooking one of the most delicious tri-tip dinners ever. Meals, always best shared with family. Being distant from my father was not easy, and representation of family accomplishments sometimes difficult to relay. For Dad, I would recount the stories and achievements of my children, Mason, AJ, who started going by Joe after a hunting trip with Dad to Colorado, Ariacela, and Sergio. He was always eager to hear more and very proud of your accomplishments. Still, those stories were most often told by telephone, and he was blessed to watch Kathy and Larry's children, Thomas and Jackie, grow up right here, graduate, get married, and start their own families. I can say unequivocally, Papa Joe was always so proud. That presence of family, that strength was a blessing to me as well. A loving wife and daughters, you were there throughout all his trials and tribulations when Pat and I couldn't be. Even as his mind was slipping, you were there supporting him on his final journey, and for that, I will always be grateful. My friends would sometimes ask, "What does your dad do?" Well, he worked in finance. He was a car salesman. He was a bartender. He was an insurance inspector. But you can't look at Joe Del Grande's life through any of those prisms. The panoply of colors that was Joe Del Grande begins with blue skies and green fields. It is built upon the snowy mountain trails and the white froth of river rapids. It is comprised of purple grapes and ripe red tomatoes. It is completed by the flesh of a handshake, the warmth of a hug, and the passion of a kiss. Dad would often joke how his fortunes would turn around if he just had $10,000. But his fortunes never needed to turn around. He was surrounded by 10,000 colors of friendship, of respect, and of love from all those around him. And we pray that on this last voyage, that little Italian boy takes that rainbow with him to be held in God's arms.